Hello there, it's the 20th of May. I'm Paul Anderson-Walsh and I'm thrilled that you join me again for Renew Every Morning. Well, now today we are on the eve of a big moment in footballing history, which is not, of course, what my subject is going to be about today, but you're just apologising or explaining the Tottenham football kit. I was smiling to myself when I was thinking about recording this because, of course, Tottenham play in the Europa League final tomorrow night against Manchester United, and when I was a child I supported Manchester United, so now I have this interesting, well, hardly a dilemma, because as you can see I've kind of really committed to who my team is, but it's an ironic thing because for those of you who know my story know I only came to be a Tottenham supporter when I moved into the children's home in the orphanage in North London, and I arrived with my Bobby Charlton pyjamas, flash and excited after the Manchester United had won the European Cup in 1968, a few years after that, and was confronted by the boys and the girls in the orphanage who said, "What football team do you support?" And I said, "Manchester United," very proudly, and went to go and show them my Bobby Charlton pyjamas, and they went, no you don't, not here you don't, here you either support Tottenham or Arsenal, and there are consequences for the wrong choice. Well, I support Tottenham, so here I am, and today ironically our verse is about putting things into practice, and so I think I've taken this verse pretty much to heart, certainly as far as Spurs are concerned. Well, it's Matthew chapter 7 and verse 24 is the verse that I've got in my mind, and it simply says this. It says, "Everyone who hears these words of mine," now watch this, "and puts into practice." So you hear the words and you put them into practice. He's like a wise man who has built his house on the rock. Do you know, I can remember being taught this in school when I was literally in primary school. I remember priests coming to talk to us about this, and this is a really lovely verse. So, and because what it's saying is, it's saying at some point in time, that's not prescribed, but at some point in time we simply have to move from just hearing the word to into being the word, if you like, and that a doing arises out of a being, but no doing that comes out of non-being is going to take you anywhere, I'm afraid. And here, this part of the text comes at just at the close. It's sort of the climax, if you like, of the Sermon on the Mount. And what a sermon, by the way! Jesus has just really laid it out for them. He's kind of laid out this kind of what I call this sort of radical blueprint for kingdonomics, and he's essentially said, this is how the economy of the kingdom works. Love your enemies, don't judge, pray in secret, seek first the kingdom, ask, knock, seek. And it's an agenda that really the religious world has no mind to be able to grasp. It's trying to get hold of it. It's quite happy to listen to sermon after sermon after sermon. I mean, just ask yourself, how long have you been involved in the church life? How many sermons have you heard? Oh my goodness, if I was to add them up, it'd just be terrifying. But how often do you go, yes, that's really good. But there's something that's not quite lighting the touch paper to take us on to living this life of ours. And he finishes, not with sentiment then, he finishes with action. So let's kind of slow it down a bit and see what we can hear. He's saying, okay, everyone who hears, and this idea is not a passive hearing, but listening with full intention. Now, this is not a simple point. There is hearing, and there is listening, and this is important. This is what you might describe as, when he's talking here about everyone who hears, he's talking about the idea of everyone who knows how to practice generative listening. And generous listening is listening that doesn't interrupt. It's listening that doesn't, if you like, try and fix anything. It doesn't try and prepare its reply. It's not figuring out its response. It's just kind of allowing a thinking in space to be created, and listening with full, uninterrupted attention, free of any judgment, free of any interruption, and free of any desire to fix, to rescue, to react, to direct, to take on responsibility. It's not trying to do that. It's simply listening, and listening to the other person in this particular case. For what reason? I guess for this, in service to the other person, not in service to your own response. So all you're trying to do is you're trying to understand what the other person is thinking. And actually, when you're doing this in a coaching world, you're trying to help that other person understand what they're thinking. This is not in service to your own response. And this kind of listening creates space. And it's out of that space that life comes. It's that transformative space. It's the kind of space that makes room for God to speak again and speak clearly. And so when we to hear in this sense is to obey. You haven't heard it until you're living it, but you can't live it until you know until you know that it's no longer you that lives, but Christ that lives within you. So this next phrase is these words of mine. Now, of course, that word again is logos, and it's not just words. It's the logos is the word, the Christ, the living word. He is the living word, and when he lives in you, his words live through you. He is the living one in you. And this is about not just about simple cerebral teaching. This is about the Jesus way. This is not about theory, not about theology, not about life patterns. No, this is about recognizing that in him we live and breathe and have our being. This is what the kingdom is calling you. It's calling you to a different idea, and to put it into practice. This isn't some kind of intellectual assent to it. It's fruit, it's motion, it's embodiment, it's living in action. It's what Richard Rohr calls contemplative prayer and action. It takes you into somewhere else. The wise just don't know, they do, and they do because they are. That's the thing. And you're like a wise man, it says, not a clever man, not one who's been religiously trained. That's one of the things we saw in scriptures. Well, these are not men just Galileans, they're just people are completely confused. But you're one who's in tune, you have the rhythm, you are in tune with the divine. And those people are people whose house is built on the rock. Now, this is important, right? Because when you're using that kind of language, who's the rock? Well, we know who the rock is. The rock is Christ. We know that. It's his presence, it's his way, it's his integrity, it's his stillness, it's his life, it's his power, it's his presence. And the opposite of that, of course, is the fool. And the fool is the person who builds his house on sand. And that building, when the storm comes, it just washes it all away. And Jesus is not teaching dual wisdom here. It's not about knowing more, it's about living as who you know yourself to be. So the wise person builds deeply and builds faithfully, but fundamentally builds upon the rock. That's really the point of it. And that's all it is. And he's simply saying, look, if you can recognize, and just let me read the verse again to you because it's just so important. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house upon the rock. That's all. So hearing, coming to that place of openness to reception, to hearing God, and building. And remember, it's not I, but Christ. It's not by might, not by power, but by your spirit, says the Lord. And that is the way of wisdom. Anyway, I hope that helps you a little bit, and may you be encouraged today. And I look forward to seeing you next time. All right, God bless. Bye-bye.